A rail strike in Canada might sound like a minor inconvenience, a chance for commuters to dust off their bikes or finally try that whole working from home thing. Oh no, my friends. We are not talking about a slightly delayed commute here. This is about a potential economic gut punch, the likes of which Canada hasn't seen in years. See, Canada's economy relies on its railways like a moose relies on, well, having somewhere to walk that isn't just more trees. We're talking about the backbone of industries, the unsung heroes of resource transportation, the metal veins pumping goods and materials across this vast maple syrup-loving nation. And if those veins clog, well, buckle up, because we're about to take a scenic, if somewhat terrifying, tour of just how badly things could go sideways. From the food on your plate to the gas in your car, and yes, even the very comfortable chair you're likely sitting on right now, unless you're one of those weirdos who watches YouTube videos standing up, in which case, hello to you, you majestic freak. A rail strike could bring Canada to its knees faster than you can say Wayne Gretzky. So, let's break down exactly how a rail strike could paralyze the Great White North, shall we? Imagine, if you will, a factory churning out those little ketchup chips Canadians seem to love so much. Everything's humming along, machines are a-clanging, potatoes are being, well, you know, chipped. But suddenly the potatoes stop. The conveyor belts grind to a halt. Why? Because the potatoes, those delicious little bastards, arrive via rail. And the rails, they're on strike, my friend. And it's not just chips. Remember that chair we talked about? The wood for that chair, the steel for the screws, all of it travels by rail. So now you've got a nation full of people with a hankering for ketchup, chips, and nowhere comfortable to sit while they wait. And that's just the tip of the iceberg, lettuce wrapped or otherwise. We're talking shortages of raw materials like lumber, steel, and grain. We're talking production delays, businesses scrambling for alternative transportation, and the price of everything from gasoline to groceries skyrocketing like a beaver on a trampoline. Basically, it's the economic equivalent of trying to make a poutine without the gravy. Sure, you could try, but it's not going to be pretty. Now, let's talk numbers, because nothing screams fun like a bit of economic doom and gloom. Every day a rail strike drags on, it's like flushing millions, if not billions, of dollars down the toilet. Companies relying on those trains to deliver goods on time are suddenly faced with penalties, lost contracts, and the very real possibility of going belly up faster than a moose in quicksand. And it's not just the big players feeling the pinch. Small businesses, the backbone of any economy worth its salt, or maple syrup as it were, are hit especially hard. They often lack the resources to weather these kinds of storms, to pivot to more expensive shipping options, or to simply absorb the losses. And what happens when businesses start failing? Well, it's not pretty. Unemployment rises, consumer spending plummets, and suddenly the Canadian economy starts looking a bit less like a majestic hockey-playing moose and a bit more like a, well, you get the picture. Let's be clear. This isn't just about numbers on a spreadsheet, this is about people's lives. When industries grind to a halt, jobs vanish faster than a plate of Nanaimo bars at a hockey game. And it's not just the rail workers themselves who feel the sting. We're talking about truck drivers, factory workers, retail employees, the whole economic ecosystem that relies on a functioning rail system. Imagine being a single parent working 2 jobs to put food on the table, only to lose one or both because the goods they handle are stuck on a train somewhere in Saskatchewan. Or picture a recent graduate finally landing their dream job only to have the offer rescinded because the company just can't afford to hire anyone new in the midst of this economic chaos. These are the real-world consequences of a rail strike, the human stories that often get lost in the cold, hard data. It's a ripple effect of economic hardship that can devastate families, communities, and the very fabric of Canadian society. Now, let's zoom out a bit, shall we? See, Canada isn't just a self-contained wonderland of politeness and poutine. It's a key player on the global stage, exporting everything from oil and lumber to, well, more oil and lumber. And how do those exports reach the rest of the world? You guessed it, by rail. A rail strike throws a wrench into the gears of global trade, turning Canada from a reliable trading partner into, well, the friend who promises to bring the beer but forgets their wallet. Suddenly, those oil shipments to the United States are delayed, those lumber orders to Europe are stuck in limbo, and Canada's reputation as a reliable exporter takes a hit harder than a hockey player going for a body check. And it's not just about lost revenue, although that's certainly a concern. A rail strike could damage Canada's long-standing trade relationships, leading to mistrust, retaliatory tariffs, and a whole host of economic headaches that make a plate of poutine look like a walk in the park. Remember that whole Canada is a major exporter of natural resources thing we talked about? Well, guess how those resources get from point A, usually somewhere remote and filled with mosquitoes, to point B, wherever the rest of the world is clamoring for them. That's right, my friend, it's train time. A rail strike throws a wrench into this well-oiled machine, leaving energy companies scrambling for alternative transportation options like it's a game of musical chairs and there's only one seat left. And spoiler alert, there aren't enough trucks in all of Canada to make up for a prolonged rail shutdown. This means production slowdowns, potential shutdowns, and those dreaded words, rising energy prices. And it's not just oil and gas. We're talking about everything from coal and potash to those rare earth minerals everyone's suddenly so interested in. Basically, if it comes out of the ground in Canada and someone somewhere wants to buy it, a rail strike could turn that resource into a very expensive paperweight. Empty plates and farm bankruptcies, agriculture in the crosshairs. Now let's talk about food, glorious food. Canada's farmers, those hardy souls who brave harsh winters and even harsher mosquito seasons, rely on trains to get their products to market. We're talking about grains, livestock, produce, the very sustenance that keeps Canadians fueled up for, well, more hockey and poutine consumption. But when the trains stop rolling, the entire agricultural system grinds to a halt like a combine harvester stuck in a snowdrift. Crops rot in silos, milk spoils in holding tanks, and farmers are left facing mountains of debt with no way to sell their products. And what happens when farmers struggle? Food prices rise, grocery store shelves start looking a bit sparse, and suddenly that comforting bowl of craft dinner doesn't seem quite so comforting anymore. Road rage, the trucking industry's impossible burden. Now you might be thinking, okay, so the trains aren't running, big deal. We'll just put everything on trucks, problem solved. Ah, my sweet summer child, if only it were that simple. See, Canada's trucking industry, already facing its own set of challenges, simply isn't equipped to handle the sheer volume of goods normally transported by rail. It would be like trying to empty a swimming pool with a teaspoon, technically possible, but wildly inefficient and likely to leave you with a nasty case of carpal tunnel. The result? Even more congested highways, longer delivery times, and a whole lot of very stressed out truck drivers. And let's not forget about the environmental impact of all those extra trucks on the road, spewing out exhaust and contributing to climate change. It's a lose-lose situation, really. Chapter 8, Political, Hot Potato Government Intervention and its Consequences. So, the economy's in shambles, people are struggling, and the price of poutine has skyrocketed. What's a government to do? Well, they could try to wait it out, hoping the two sides will reach an agreement before things get really ugly, but that's a risky gamble, like trying to outmaneuver a hockey puck on roller skates. It might work, but it's more likely to end in disaster. The other option, government intervention. We're talking back-to-work legislation, forced arbitration, anything to get those trains moving again and stop the economic bleeding. But this comes with its own set of problems. Forcing workers back on the job without addressing their concerns can lead to resentment, future labour unrest, and a whole lot of angry Canadians. It's a delicate balancing act, really, trying to protect the economy while also respecting workers' rights. And let's be honest, politicians aren't exactly known for their grace and agility when it comes to these sorts of things. More often than not, it's less like a graceful pirouette and more like a bull in a china shop. The derailed economy, a call to action. So there you have it. The potential consequences of a rail strike in Canada laid bare like a plate of poutine without the cheese curds. It's a sobering thought, isn't it? This isn't just about delayed shipments or slightly higher prices. It's about the very fabric of Canadian society, the livelihoods of millions, and the delicate balance of an interconnected global economy. The good news is, it doesn't have to be this way. By understanding the stakes, by engaging in open and honest dialogue, and by prioritizing the needs of both workers and the economy, it's possible to avert this potential crisis, but it requires effort, compromise, and a willingness to put aside short-term gains for the sake of long-term stability. So the next time you see a train rumbling by, don't just take it for granted. Think about the vital role it plays in your life, in the lives of millions of Canadians, and in the health of the global economy. Because when the trains stop, it's not just the cargo that's affected, it's all of us.